Hello, Marie. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello, Katie.
Oh, good. There you are.
Oh, good. I'm here.
I was nervous for a second.
I don't know what happened. It works so well at a moment ago.
I know. I think I may I think I may open the session with a warning. If the tech fails, then we'll just record it all for another time.
So the audio is good, right?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Good. Okay, perfect. Okay. So.
And then what will help as well, Maria, is when everyone will be self-muted as well, so it'll just be you and your voice.
Ah, okay. I got it. Okay.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
There is a sign-in sheet. If you've already registered, I have your information. Otherwise, there's an easy Google Drive sign-in sheet to the right in the chat box.
Thank you.
And then we'll start right around noon. Hi, Don. How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Katie.
Oh, good. Don, can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure his audio is working since he's speaking. Oh. There you go. Can you hear us? No, I can't hear you. Right when you jumped on, it should have asked you to connect to your audio, your computer audio. You might have to hang up and click back on again. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. We have a little sign-in sheet to the right
Okay.
if you'd like to put your name in. Don, is your audio working yet?
Me now.
Oh, there you are. Good.
Okay.
Okay, great. And then if you just lower this, if you lower the screen a little bit so we could see you better.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, great.
Okay. I've been on a long call. That's why I didn't.
If everyone could please self-mute. Thank you. Okay, we're just waiting for a couple more people.
Ah,
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
hello.
Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes before we begin. I know Valerie said that she has a weak connection, so she'll probably just be audio. And then for right now, if you're not speaking, if you could self-mute would be a big help. And we're just waiting for a few more people to come on. Oh, hello, Valerie. Okay, I think we have our first speakers lined up, so we could probably go ahead and begin. I do have some updates to the agenda as well. And I know with these, people jump in and out, and it's always good because they will be recorded for use afterwards. I know this is a really difficult time for anyone in Australia, New Zealand, India, and China, Japan. So before we begin, could everyone take a moment and please self-mute your computer?
On the computer, not on the screen, right?
Oh, it's on Zoom itself. There's a self-mute button.
Where is it? I don't see it.
It's at the top of, so if you just put your cursor over it, you'll see a little blue mute, and just click on that blue mute. Okay. All right, great. Well, I think we'll go ahead and begin then. Like I said, this is being recorded and it will be shared widely with our networks afterwards. I'd first like to thank everyone so much for attending. This is our third webinar course for our inaugural year with the Ecological Law and Governance Association. As you can see from the, let me share my screen a little bit now. Hold on one second. And then I'll introduce myself, of course. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of a sneak peek actually into our website we'll be launching soon. But we are ALGA, and all of our partner organizations, our network, we exist entirely because of our network. This is a site that's going to be soon launched, but you can see our mission and our vision to provide a forum and a platform for our groups to connect and to amplify. That's our main purpose, not to be in competition with one another, but to share voices and move from our current human-centered, growth-focused legal paradigm to an earth-centered ecological law and governance paradigm. My name is Catherine Guazdon, and let me stop sharing my screen. Hold on. Stop share. Okay. There we go. My name is Catherine Guazdon. I'm one of the steering committee members. I'm also the executive director of the Center for Environmental Ethics and Law, a non-for-profit based out of the United States. I am an expert with the Harmony with Nature program and also a member of the IUCN Ethics Specialist Group of the World Commission on Environmental Law. So you could even see from the agenda, there are several partners that inform our work. And today, most strongly, and I was proud to organize this session under SEAL's banner, the Ethics Specialist Group, and of course with our wonderful partner, Maria Mercedes Sanchez, who will be speaking shortly about the UN Harmony with Nature program. Just to give a little bit of instructions, I guess. So please, if you're not speaking, please mute. That helps the course go along. We do try to stay firm to the 90 minutes. We'll have our welcome and introduction and brief background from Maria Mercedes Sanchez, and I'll introduce each speaker as they are speaking. One update is that Kirsten Angle will be speaking towards the end of the agenda because as a current representative, she actually just had to give a media interview because the federal administration is trying to take away clean water protections for her state. So if you could please mute. Hello, how are you? If you could please mute your screen. Or there we go. Okay. So she'll be speaking at the end. So we'll go ahead and open with Maria and then move on to Valerie, Don, and then have a few questions and answers if Kirsten hasn't jumped on yet, and then she will, and we'll close with any further questions and answers with time provided. If someone has to jump off, if one of the panelists has to jump off, because I think these are some of the busiest people I've ever met, they said they are more than welcome to take questions afterwards. Just email them to me. My email address is on the flyer. A little bit of background into the Ecological Law and Governance Association. And you can check out our website. I think most of you are already familiar. It began with the Oslo Manifesto, and then the association itself, and the manifesto was moving from environmental law to ecological law. So it's highlighting the problems of our current system. Then we met in Siena in October 2017 and launched the association that would help move the work forward. And that is where we actually highlighted some of the key concepts and principles that we need to unpack. And those documents, of course, are on the website. We do have upcoming gathering at the University of Siena. It'll be a big ALGA meeting. We're going to try to do it annual, if not biannual. And it's October 24th to 27th on best practices of ecological law and governance. So if you're interested in all these workshops I'm about to say, if you're interested in participating, please email and let me know. And we will be trying to do virtual presentations and participants as well. There is a workshop at the CANSI conference coming up in May in Canada. We will have a session at the Global Ecological Integrity Group in Trieste, Italy in June. And then a workshop in November at the Federal University of Santa Catarina in Florianopolis. So we have ongoing meetings. And if anything, if you'd like to be a part of the network and like to share anything, please let me know and I'll make sure that it gets out. The webinar series itself, I'll take 30 seconds for background. This was just another vehicle we thought of how we can unpack some of these terms. and some of the work of what ecological law and governance means, and also to identify the challenges of what we're facing over different topic areas. Today's course is important because it's climate change and education. And it's one thing to have the knowledge, it's quite another to be able to translate it and to translate it to different audiences for the purpose of not only informing, but motivating and creating laws and policies, concrete laws and policies, and how that works globally and of course locally in the case of sometimes absent federal leadership. So I think we'll go ahead and begin from there. Really quickly to the background of the course today, please note climate change and education are the SDG focal points for the 2019 Harmony with Nature program and dialogue, which is next week. And that's why Maria Mercedes is so incredibly busy, because her big annual event before the General Assembly is next week. So thank you so much, Maria, for being here. She is the director of the program, and she'll tell us a little bit about herself and the initiative. So Maria, would you like to go ahead and begin?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Katie. Just a point of correction: I'm not the director. I'm the coordinator of the program. Okay. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and I also warm greetings to all the other panelists who are also presenting in this webinar. Let me start right away with our website, where you will find most of the information. I'm going to walk you through some of the highlights. And then as in the coming weeks, it would be great if you can get familiar with the program and with the website, as everything is documented here. Now, I go back to 2009, when the plurinational state of Bolivia, with the support of Ecuador and other like-minded countries, put in the agenda of the General Assembly the Harmony with Nature theme, which is in essence a non-anthropocentric paradigm. Like Katie mentioned at the very beginning of her presentation, we are talking about an Earth-centered paradigm, very different from the environmental paradigm, where nature is considered an object and property under the law, to an Earth-centered paradigm where the Earth is considered a subject with legal personhood, and therefore that is going to trigger many, many changes in many other disciplines like economics, humanities, sciences, etc. So on the website, you will see the first page is the home page or the program page, and you see the image of the solar system, because this reminds us that the Earth is just one planet among many in an immense universe. So I think it's very important to be reminded that we are not the center of the Earth, nor the Earth is the center of the universe. So this image, I think, it captures the essence of the program. And then so from 2009 to 2012, I'm sorry, let me back. In 2009, there were two resolutions of the General Assembly adopted. One was designating the 22nd April International Mother Earth Day. You can stay in the homepage for now, Katie.
Okay.
Yeah. Designating International Mother Earth Day. And then the second resolution, which is actually the first resolution on harmony with nature, it was also adopted in 2009. So during the period 2009-2012, it was just a resolution being presented by a group of like-minded countries. But as of 2012, this resolution was endorsed by the G77 and China. So when we went to Rio +20 and the UN adopted the future we want, then in paragraph 38, this is the very first reference to the rights of nature, which says it calls for holistic and integrated approaches to sustainable development. Member states and other stakeholders acknowledge that Mother Earth is a common expression in a number of societies, and noted that some countries recognize the rights of nature in the context of the promotion of sustainable development. So this passage is the very first time that a UN document officially acknowledges that the rights of nature is part of the process of the conversation in the implementation of sustainable development. Then we move to the page, Katie, when you click on the chronology. So here you will find everything that we've been doing since 2009 until present. And if you place the cursor on the right, you can see all the years. So you can easily access any given year. But the format of this information is always the same. Is the links to the resolutions, links to the reports of the Secretary General, links to the dialogues. So any key information for a particular year, you will find it here, okay? Then we move to the page of dialogues, which is, as Katie mentioned, I'm in the process of preparing the next dialogue for next Monday. And here you will, if you click on the 9th interactive dialogue of the General Assembly, we have now made available the concept note, the program, and the list of panelists who will be intervening this coming Monday. So you will be able to see all the information and all their bios. And then we move to the page of nature's rights. And this page has 3 sub-pages, which mainly, the main one is the law. And here is where we are monitoring and documenting, you know, all the official documents, official legislation that is happening worldwide on this issue. Again, when you put the cursor on the right, you will have the list in alphabetical order of all the countries, and you'll be able to click. And then, for example, I'm clicking right now in India, and then the page will scroll down and take you to all the documentation. So we're only working with official documentation and related articles, just to make sure that indeed we have the right core sentence, the right piece of national legislation. So until that is issued, we actually do not post anything, because it's important for governments to see the official document. So here you will have, we have quite a good, you know, an important number of countries that are in the process of passing national legislation. Then when you go back to nature's rights and you click on policy, here again, same thing, but just at the policy level, countries or institutions that are working on this issue. And then when you go back to the page, Nature's Rights, and you click on education, you will find here some of the most recent pieces of education. Everything is documented in the reports of the Secretary General, and we are in the process of expanding this website. So this is a new page, so you may not be able to see everything. Maybe just some information that happened since the last report was issued in last summer. But it's a work in progress, so eventually you will be able to see everything here. Then we move to the page of environmental provisions, Katie. And here you will find the passages in either the Constitution or the second most important legal document in the country that relates specifically to environment. And this will help over time to be able to do some comparative analysis, so how people view environment, and then how we are moving to the rights of nature. So we still keep all this information, because all this is important information. It reflects how Constitution, in which passages the Constitution talk about the environment. And if they don't talk at the constitutional level, then what is the second most important legal document at the national level that addresses the environment? The next window is going to be the platform. And this is an important platform because in 2016, we deviated a little bit from the physical dialogues that were being held in New York, and we created a dialogue online. And through that online dialogue, we were able to identify over 100 experts working actually on this issue that until then, we didn't know each other. I mean, we have probably read about each other, we have probably footnoted each other, but we have not actually interacted. And it's in 2016 where we actually meet formally, and since then we've been working together in the preparation of information, of reports, keeping everybody up to date through social media. So I really encourage you to look at this platform. Katie is part of it, Valerie Cabanes as well, and there are many others in ELGA like Christiane Derani, Professor Klaus Bosselmann. So it's a big network, and they're all very, very active. So you will have a sub-menu with, as you can see on the screen, with welcome, all experts, Earth Your Experts Library, events, statistics. So just for the sake of the example, Katie, if you click in all experts, and then you try to identify your name, alphabetical order. Do you see yourself?
I'm looking. There I am.
Okay, when you click there, you will see Katie's profile. Okay, a short bio, and then that applies for all the members of the platform. And then when you go back to platform, and then you click on Earth Jurisprudence. Here you will see that we address 8 issues. We don't only address rights of nature as such, but we also address 8 disciplines. Okay, ecological economics, education, holistic science, humanities, philosophy and ethics, the arts, media, design and architecture, and theology and spirituality. So again, here you will find what the different experts, what is the different experts' view on Earth jurisprudence from these different disciplines. Of course, we have a lot of lawyers, and because actually this approach is being grounded in the law. This is how it's unfolding. It's not happening in engineering. It's not happening in architecture, and therefore that's why the number of lawyers outnumbers all the other disciplines. But here you will find a lot of information, and then we have people working on education, on holistic science, humanities, the arts. As you scroll down, you will find the other disciplines. Then when we go back to platform and we click on Experts Library, here you will see the experts are able, as part of this network, are able to upload their bibliography, whether it's a book, a document, an article, a video, okay, on the issue. So here, all the information is the information that they have drafted, that, it is their authorship. So you will find here, for example, I see on my screen Valerie Cabanés. She has uploaded quite a number of important material. And then what we do is we circulate all this information through social media, because I receive a lot of requests about, where do I go for this author, or how do I research? And so this is a very important research tool that people are using to get familiar with the subject. Then we go back to platform, and then we click on events. And here you will find everything that is going on so far on this issue. Okay, if you want to see from previous years, you scroll down and you click 2018, and then you'll be able to see what happened last year on the topic. So there are quite a number of events. Sometimes people forget to upload the information, but by the end of the year, when everything is done, then there is quite an important number of events taking place on the issue. After that, we click platform and then statistics. And here is basically the experts in number, okay? So you'll be able to see how many experts we have from which country. And then when you place the cursor on the map, you can see, right now I have it on Mali, it says experts 1. You put it in the US, we have 46. You put it in Canada, we have 8. You put it in Brazil, you have 35. So it is a little bit the network in numbers. Then we go back to the main menu, and you will see trust fund. And this is an agreement that was passed between the plurinational state of Bolivia and the UN Secretariat, and to have some funding to be able to bring experts from other countries into the dialogues mainly. And of course, we've been trying to do some fundraising for the trust fund. It's quite difficult, but this is what it's meant to be able to bring participants to the dialogues. And when you click in trust fund, you will find the agreement in Spanish and also the English translation. So I encourage you to read it. to see, what does it entail to be part of this, or what would it entail if you get money to this trust fund is for very specific activities. If you go to the page, let me see, page 5, it specifically says the objective of this contribution is to implement the following activities, and all these activities that are described here are Earth Center activities. Okay. Now we go back to the main menu, and then you will see the library. And this is part of the research that we did in the early years of the program. I was doing a lot of research. There were many scholars also doing research, so we uploaded all that information here, so for people to be informed and also, to reference properly. So there are almost 900 records that one way or another, they address this issue throughout history. So if you are doing some research, this is a great source to look at. And then on the main menu again, we have the UN documents, and here you will find all the resolutions, all the reports that in terms of the resolutions, the GA has adopted. They're all by consensus. We have now 10 resolutions and almost 10 reports as well. So this is a full-fledged program. So this is important for you to know, because all these resolutions that you see here are resolutions of the General Assembly. So we have a mandate for everything that we do. And then the last page, which is the gratitude page, where we exist because there are so many people that are working with us, so many experts that are part of this network that share good information. Events like this one, are also part of our work. So we're all collaborating to be able to convey the most reliable information, the more sound information on the issue, because it's quite a complex issue. It doesn't affect only the law, it affects many, many other disciplines. And we're trying to share as much as we can the information as it becomes available. But most importantly, reliable information, trustworthy sources. So this is in essence, the program, the website. There is a lot of information that I really encourage you to over the next days, to visit the page, to become familiar with the information. If you are doing research, I think we have a lot of material there that can be of use to all of you. Also, for the next dialogue, coming on Monday, is going to be broadcast. I will share with Katie the flyer. So if you can, join us live through the web TV, that would be great. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. So you're most welcome to share the flyer with the people you think might be interested. Everything has been, and as I mentioned to you earlier, everything is in the dialogues page. So just take your time to become familiar, and I hope that I can, at some point, I can interact more with you. Please, if you have any questions, send them to Katie. And I will follow up with you at some point. And I really look forward, to have a longer conversation with you. But now I really have to go. And thank you, Katie, for inviting me. I wish you a good webinar. I say bye to all my other colleagues, and looking forward to be in touch with you soon.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I'll make sure to send the dialogue information to the ELGA newsletter listserv, as well as to the IUCN listserv as well. Thank you so much for being here and introducing your work to us. So.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. And like she said, if you have any questions, because she could only commit to her speaking time, please send me them, and I will make sure that they get directly to her. So, all right, I think we'll move on. And as said earlier, Kirsten will be joining us at the end of the course today. So we will go ahead and speak now with, I'd like to introduce you to Valerie Caban, and she'll be speaking on emotional and legal learning, a key for citizen action against climate change. She is one of the panelists for the UN Dialogue next week, so it's a real pleasure to have her here. And she's a legal expert in international law, specializing in human rights and is honorary president of Notre Affaire à Tout. She has written extensively on the rights of Earth, on ecocide, on climate crimes even. So Valerie, if you'd like to give a short introduction and then to continue with your presentation today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I think you present me already, so I don't have a lot to say. And I will explain a little bit more in my presentation what is this NGO, Notre Affaire à Tous, which means our affair to all. As far as the subject today is about how, in a way, how to find what are the keys to mobilize the people to tackle climate change. I wanted to join the idea that we need emotion to act, and I will explain why. And then I will give you a clear example of what we can do with the example that what we did in France. So I will read my presentation because English is not my native language, and it's easier for me to be sure that I can be understood, if you don't mind. But I will let on the camera. Okay, that's fine?
Perfect.
Okay, let's start then. And of course, you can stop me if you have the feeling that something is not working or...
Okay, thank you.
So, you know Seneca the Younger, this philosopher, the Greek philosopher, said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." We are all aware of climate change effects and its frightening consequences. We are now even capable to identify the reasons why. We know what to do and how to limit the rise of temperatures and natural disasters. We are told how to change our individual behavior and how collectively we should tackle the issue. But still, we believe that collective means of action is only in the hands of our representatives. So we look at them as spectators. We see that they do not respect their commitments, that their actions are slow and weak. But then, what do we do? Should we just wait for the sky to fall on our heads? That's the question. Faced with the perils that threaten us, each of us, like the hummingbird, we should intervene to extinguish the great fire. But it is as well essential to connect us in order to act in a universal way. Jung would say it is the synchronicity of our actions that will bring about change. The more we act in synchronicity, the more we will have confidence in our collective capacities, the more we will be able to act as a great wave. But we cannot just hope for it. We must also embody it. The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti explains it differently. He said, "Revolution must begin with you and me. That revolution, that individual transformation can take place only when we understand relationship, which is the process of self-knowledge." I think that what we need now is to feel emotion. In our life, it is indeed our thought and emotions that fuel our actions, which in turn produce our results. We should open our heart to empathy for the ones who are already suffering from drought or floods, and we should also believe that we can succeed together to avoid the great collapse. We are like a tree, our thought and emotions corresponding to the roots, our actions corresponding to the trunk. The density of our action is proportional to the diameter of the trunk. Our results corresponding to the fruits, and the quantity of fruits symbolizes that of the results. In France, we have decided to become a big tree. You know, since the 60s, successive French governments, and you may have noticed that in your own country as well, have always postponed courageous decisions needed to tackle climate change. In this context, prior to the COP21, I co-founded in August 2015 an NGO named Notre Affaire à tous, Our Affair to All, to promote climate justice, rights of nature, and the recognition of the current ecocide. So on the account that greenhouse gas emissions have risen since the Paris Agreement in 2015 in France, we launched on December 18, 2018, so 3 months ago, with 3 other NGOs, the Foundation for Nature and Man, the Greenpeace France, and Oxfam France, a citizen campaign called The Case of the Century, in support to our common decision to sue the French state for not doing enough for the climate since decades and for its failure in complying to its international commitments. What is incredible, because of course we are not the first climate case in the world, is that in 3 days only, the online petition was signed by 1 million people in 3 days, reaching then more than 2 million a month later, making it the most signed petition in French history. Then, we addressed a preliminary request to the government demonstrating the state's inactions on climate change. Open a period of 2 months during which the state could choose to answer it or not. This is the procedure. We referred in our statement to the impacts of climate change on the environment, human health, respect for fundamental rights and social equality, as described recently by IPCC, by the International Government Panel on Climate Change in its last report. We also realized that most of our politicians didn't read the report, in fact. So among the actions deemed necessary towards our goal, we requested the government to reduce French carbon footprint, abandon the use of fossil and nuclear energy while transitioning to renewables, improve energy efficiency, and prepare a national climate change adaptation and mitigation plan. On the 15th of February, 2 months ago now, we received an official letter from the Ministry for Ecological and Solidarity Transition, not at our attention, the 4 NGOs, but at the attention of the 2 million signatories of the Case of the Century, stating that, and I quote, "The means required to answer this emergency are far from getting an evident and systematic adhesion from the citizens. Additionally, these letters call for a change in individual behavior as the main solution." So, to us, this rhetoric appeared to be really of bad faith and irresponsible towards future generations. In fact, citizens are well aware of climate change threats, especially the young ones, who know that they will be the ones on the front line of the climate change consequences in few decades. I want to emphasize also that a video in support of the Case of the Century was made in collaboration with 2 collectives of French YouTubers, very famous one. Those collectives are named We Are Ready, and the other one is There Is Still Time. That's the translation from French. And this video was viewed over 14 million times online in the span of a single month, knowing that we are 69 million in France. This is important to mention, as the public targeted was mainly composed by teenagers and young adults. Today, this same population who feels more and more concerned by these issues are also lacking the means to make their voices be heard and influence political decisions. In view of the inaction of their governments, they are even losing faith in their elected representatives. For this reason, we believe that the Case of the Century was perceived as a very concrete and efficient way to request an immediate action from the government. Following this call, the youth massively joined the global climate strike for future, you know, the one inspired by Greta Thunberg, on the 15th of March this year, which mobilized around the world a total of 1,400,000 people. That's the biggest climate march in history. But we organized also a march the next day on the 16th of March that we called the March of the Century in France for all citizens. And they united. There were 350,000 people in the street. So, invigorated by this massive support from the civil society, and after disappointing answer received from the French government, we came to the decision to bring the case before the Paris Administrative Court at the end of May. We cannot do that as a class action because class action on climate are not allowed in France. So we do it on the name of the 4 NGOs, but knowing the support of those millions of people. We are clearly following the path opened by other citizens in the world, deeply inspired by their success. I could mention, of course, the case filed by Uganda Foundation in the Netherlands, where the judiciary ordered the Dutch government to revise upward its targets for reducing greenhouse gas emission. Or the one in Colombia, filed by 25 young people. This case is amazing. The Colombian Supreme Court ordered the presidency and the ministries of Environment and Agriculture to create an intergenerational pact for the life of the Colombian Amazon, but also, in order to protect this vital ecosystem, recognize the Colombian Amazon as an entity subject of rights and having the rights now to be protected, which leads to the stop of the deforestation of the Amazon, which is the best way to tackle the climate change at the moment. This judgment shows us all the way to deal efficiently with the issue of climate change, but also other ecological issues, such as the biodiversity collapse, the global pollution, the scarcity of fresh water, the acidification of the ocean. We must understand that the very conditions of life on Earth, as we know it since 10,000 years, or maybe 12,000 years, are really threatened, jeopardizing the lives of generations to come. So now in France, our next goal is to obtain from the government an amendment to the Constitution, which should state, at least in its first article, that the Republic ensures, and I quote the amendment that we propose to the government and to the Senate and to the French Assembly. The Republic ensures a sustainable and equitable use of natural resources, guarantees the preservation of biological diversity, and fights against climate change within the framework of planetary boundaries. It ensures solidarity between generations. A generation cannot subject future generations to laws that are less protective of the environment than those in force. The process of reforming the Constitution has been suspended because of the Gilets jaunes, you know, the yellow jacket, but also because of a story with a bodyguard last summer, but we really hope that the process will start again soon. We also advocate to recognize rights to natural ecosystems, and we are heard more and more, also because they are convinced by the scale of our citizen movement. Just a month ago, members of the French Senate have agreed to bring a legislative draft bill on the crime of ecocide. As a member of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, I have been invited to an hearing procedure in front of the Laws Commission. I do believe that we have to argue about the benefits that the recognition of the rights of future generations and the rights of nature would have to protect all living beings from mass extinction and climate disasters. If the conditions of life itself are threatened on Earth, how could we guarantee the fulfillment of any fundamental human rights, such as the right to water, the right to food, housing, or health? How could we even expect to maintain peace among people and nations? So we have to recognize the duty of humanity to protect life on the long term. That's the only way to guarantee its security. We also have to recognize the rights of ecosystem and natural communities to exist and flourish, to play their own role in the community of life on Earth. We cannot deny anymore our kinship with animals, plants, trees, nor can we avoid the biological reality that we are beings of nature. If our capacity to be conscious of ourselves has led us insidiously to imagine ourselves as external to reality, then this individual consciousness will have to move towards a universal consciousness in which everyone accepts to be a mere note in this great symphony of life, and beyond that, the cosmos, while staying rooted to the ground, like the tree. And this can only be done by a deep, deep awareness of the principle of interdependence that binds us all, which binds us to the earth and all other living beings. We should embody a deeply egalitarian worldview in the sense that everyone is recognized in his vital function and everyone knows that he or she is necessary to others. The Persian philosopher Rumi summed it up simply. He told us, "You are not a drop of water in the ocean. You are the whole ocean in a drop of water." This holistic thought is common to many spiritual traditions and finds its source in the wisdom of the indigenous people. And I think this has allowed them to find their rightful place and live for millennia in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. That was a beautiful and powerful presentation that linked it to real action. And the combination of truth with emotion towards motivation. I would like to open it up for a couple questions, and also just to see if a link is available to the campaign, if you could share that with me and I'll make sure that it gets out, as well as the text for the constitutional amendment that you're working on, if you feel comfortable to share it at this point. I would love to see the language of that.
I can even share the text with all the links inside if you want.
Wonderful. Yeah, that'd be if you could share them either in this chat here, or I could just make sure that it goes out to the listserv as well.
Okay.
So, and we probably have time for 2 questions. Does anyone have a question for Valerie?
Katie, I posted one, and maybe
Yes.
I'm not in a place where I can really speak very easily. Maybe would you mind reading it? Or
Sure, of course. It says,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have it right here, Jeff. A question for Valerie. Jeff is on the ALGA steering committee as well, just so you know. He's out of McGill University. I sometimes wonder who we are that want to take collective action on climate change. Here in Canada, we have an election this October, and the Conservative Party is prepared, once again, to lead their campaign by opposing Canada's new nationwide carbon tax. As in the past, they call this a tax on everything. This campaign is likely to be effective, and a climate change denying government may take power. So what do we do about this part of us that keeps needed collective action against climate change from happening? I favor our marches and our petitions, but are they having enough impact?
Yeah, of course, in France that was the same. You know, we were organizing marches, petitioning, even actions of civil disobedience. I know a lot of activists now who have problems with justice because we try to stole the chairs from the banks to highlight the fact that they are still investing in fossil fuels, for example. But that's why we decided to use the tool of law. and of climate justice, because there is an emergency. And we cannot just shout loud in the street. That's not enough anymore. What Greta is doing is fantastic, because she managed to unite the youth. But then I always say that law is the last protection from violence. And so we need to give tools to the youth, but to everyone, to all citizens. And this use is just to remind our government what are their responsibilities. That's what the judge said in the Netherlands. The judge explained when he agreed with the 900 citizens and the Your Gender Foundation. He said the first duty of the state is to protect its population and its territory. So the first duty is really to protect our fundamental rights and the rights to an healthy environment. And they forget it because they are working hand in hand with the corporates. So there are in all countries, look at what happens in the US. We have a climate case going on since a long time, Juliana versus Obama, and then Juliana versus Trump now. And Trump is really trying to break this case, but we really have to follow and support this kind of action. And why not doing that in Canada too? You don't need to be a lot of people. In the US, there are 21 young people, but of course you need lawyers and who are working for you pro bono. But what we try to do in France is also to organize a crowdfunding and explain to the citizen that's a way also to be involved in the campaign or in the lawsuit, is to help us, to organize that. Because the problem with a lawsuit is that you have to engage yourself for at least 2 or 3 years at minimum. But that's why I wanted to give you this kind of testimony, because I think there were a lot of ingredients. Young lawyers who wanted to do something, the YouTubers who understood that they have their own role to play because they are followed by so many young people. Then we had some VIPs who joined the campaign and were on the video. And so when you have all those ingredients, it can really blow.
And Valerie, what you spoke about as well really reminds me of one of my favorite books right now. You might have already known about it, but it's Martha Nussbaum. She's a philosopher at the University of Chicago, on why love matters for justice. And she talks about, unfortunately, you have to sometimes see these great injustices to be motivated and build that solidarity.
And that's the problem with civil disobedience or with, I would say, radical action, is that then you have a part of the population who will, be afraid of you, and the government will use that, saying that you are kind of green terrorist. So when you use law, you ask a judge, to give an opinion, and they cannot say that you are like radicals, or it's just that you request your rights to be recognized. That's it.
Thank you. That's a terrific answer. I want to say courage, bonne chance, et félicitations.
Merci.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And there are some additional comments in the chats if you want to view those as well. But I think we will now move on to Donald Brown. Don will be speaking today on, I think I had written 6 things that governments and citizens need to know, but I think it's now 7. So 7 things that citizens and governments urgently need to understand about climate change. So we're addressing not just youth, not just civil society, not just academics, but policymakers as well. And if you want to look through his bio, right now he is scholar in residence and professor at Widener University School of Law. And he has been a member of the ethics specialist group for as long as it existed, I believe. So Don, if you'd like to go ahead and begin with your presentation. And did you have a PowerPoint?
Yes, I'm going to.
Okay, great. So just make sure you share your screen and go through it. And if everyone else could just mute, would be a great help. Thank you.
Okay, can you see the PowerPoint there?
Yes.
Okay. Boy, I'm so pleased to spend some time with you all. I would all, just based upon what I've heard so far, I would hope to go out and have a glass of wine with you all and discussing. So I've been involved in climate change at the highest level for 30 years. I was a negotiator for the Clinton administration at the UN. I'm an IUCN author on the equity chapter. So I've been in the middle of it. And I've recently discovered how little most people know about things that they have to know to critically evaluate national climate targets. In fact, I had a project with the University of Auckland Law School where we got 24 researchers in 24 countries to find out what countries were actually setting their NDC on. Was it really based upon the warming limit goals of the Paris Agreement and equity, which are the two legal requirements? And what we discovered is, no, that's not what the governments did. They based it upon economic self-interest, was the limiting factor in all 24 governments. That didn't surprise us. We expected to find that result. What we didn't expect to find is that the NGOs in all 24 countries, the researchers came back, they didn't understand how to criticize a greenhouse gas target to comply with the Paris Agreement. And the reason why people don't know that part of it is for 25 years, the way you set a target was you would do a greenhouse gas inventory, you figured out what policies you could get adopted politically, and you pick the policies and you subtract it where they would get you from your greenhouse gas inventory. And that's how you set a target. But if you're trying to establish a warming limit, things get much more complicated. You have to know about carbon budgets. You have to really know what equity requires. So we found out that in all 24 countries, the NGOs didn't know how to critically evaluate what their countries were doing, which is very troubling because Paris Agreement, the only thing we have is to shame governments in the years ahead. So the other thing that's going on is the most recent science is really, really scary. I now believe that even I was underestimating the speed, scope, and timing of the problem. And therefore, the whole world needs every level of government in a warlike effort to start to reduce greenhouse gases to zero. And we're facing great ignorance, at least in the United States, about how to think about all of that. The state government people in the state of Pennsylvania, they didn't know after Paris that both the 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade warming limit required all governments to go to zero. So at least in the United States, the ignorance about things people need to know to think critically is staggering. And so it's my view that what I should be doing is helping educate civil society about a whole bunch of things that they don't know. And I've been going around talking to legislators and environmental groups who people have worked on climate change, and they agreed that they didn't know the stuff that I was talking about. So what is the stuff that they don't know? I mean, you already know that climate change is already causing great damages and death around the world. 2018 is staggering in terms of increasing forest fires, deaths, storms, and so forth. You all know that. It's already increasing dengue and Lyme disease, yellow fever, Zika, and malaria. Now, why I mention that is because in the United States, the problem in the United States, the reason why we're so ignorant is because the opponents of climate change have framed the debate, and the proponents have not challenged the framing of the debate. Okay, so in the United States, the arguments against climate change were economic costs to the US or economic industry, and 90% of the response even from the environmental groups, was to say, well, it would create jobs, completely ignoring the fact that life on Earth is actually threatened if between 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, and things that are happening to other people are going to bite Americans really badly, something they don't know. New York Times just yesterday had a story. Trump is, as you all know around the world, is preoccupied with the southern border of the United States. Well, the people coming from Central America are fleeing climate change. The World Bank predicted at 2 degrees centigrade, between 150 and 200 million more refugees every year. Okay, so what's happening in other countries is going to bite everybody, and it's already destabilizing the Earth. And the environmental NGOs, when they talk about climate change, they don't talk in those terms. They simply, when the fossil fuel companies oppose it because of cost, they simply say, well, it will create jobs, completely ignoring the enormous harm that climate change is already causing and will affect everybody. There are conflicts. When I was with the EPA, I was the EPA liaison to the United Nations in the Clinton administration. They sent me to the Army War College to do war games. This was in the mid-90s. We did war games over Syria. The military knew that drought in Syria could create a problem. There was a 6-year drought in Syria from 2001 to 2006. It created 1 million refugees, and it's already destabilizing the world. And the World Bank is predicting between 150 to 200 million refugees a year. Okay, so the problem is much bigger. Therefore, the need for education is, I think, priority number one. Future climate change, of course, what everyone is worried about, and most people don't know this, the reason why the world agreed to 2 degrees centigrade, I think it was in COP 18 or 19 for the first time, was because there was sort of a rough agreement that if you could keep temperatures below 2 degrees centigrade, the probability of triggering the multiple nonlinear thresholds in the system were pretty low. But we've now found out that some of the nonlinear thresholds, the permafrost threshold, the Arctic ice threshold, the slowdown of the thermal haline circulation is already starting to happen. So these are the thresholds. People have to understand that this is not metaphorically an existential threat. It's literally an existential threat to life on Earth. 5 of the 6 great extinctions were started by carbon dioxide levels, usually coming from volcanoes. And the worst of all, that triggered methane release in the Permian extinction. It's when you trigger these thresholds, things can get out of control. And I wish I was wrong about this, but most scientists are saying, holy shit, the thresholds are much closer now than even we thought. That we can. There was a paper in the National Academy of Sciences report that said that some of these thresholds are now, there's evidence, it's not conclusion, that we're starting to trigger them at 1.1 degrees centigrade. And one paper recently in the National Academy of Sciences said we can trigger several of these thresholds before we get to 2 degrees centigrade. So I wish I had a happier story to tell, but we haven't. The metaphor, this is an existential threat, is not a metaphor. It's actually the case. These are the tipping points. They all speed up the warming. And several peer-reviewed papers, including this one, said that the methane permafrost is starting to leak already. This is really scary. And if that were not bad enough, okay, I work around the world with colleagues, and they have been saying for 10 years that the IPCC models don't have the positive feedbacks in them. And I said, that can't be true. They would never do that. They wouldn't leave the methane, the permafrost methane out of the models. Well, now turns out that they're not in the models. Everything I said so far is predicted by IPCC models, which are leaving out some of these positive feedbacks. Now, why that's the case is a really interesting story. IPCC only allows IPCC synthesizes the peer-reviewed literature. Most of the scientific journals don't allow you to make claims unless science is set up to prevent what is called a type 2 statistical error. Science is set up to prevent scientists from making a false claim about cause and effect. But if you have a problem which is really dangerous, philosophers say you need a precautionary science. But the scientific journals don't allow you to speculate, okay? So at the heart of this is an ethical problem. Many of the ethical problems that are not being discussed. And I just want to say that the Frankfurt School predicted the United States would be the place in the world where we would try to find out what should be seen as ethical problems as factual disputes. They talked about instrumental reason. They predicted that instrumental reason, where you fought policy over facts which hide the ethical questions. And at the bottom of all of this is the success of the fossil fuel industry to hide what should be seen as ethical questions by factual disputes. There's an enormous need for education. 2 degrees centigrade is really scary. 3 degrees centigrade is what we're predicting is awful. And let alone 4 and 5 degrees centigrade, it looks like the best we can do is 2 degrees centigrade. Some of you know that IPCC special report on the 1.5 degrees centigrade says the whole world, to limit warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, the whole world must reduce carbon by 45% by 2030. That's 12 years from now, okay? So we have a historical emergency. We're in this space because we've let corporate money control politics. I've watched them do it. We should be talking about Exxon, in my belief, as criminals. They funded misinformation. They're still doing it. They created think tanks and front groups. And there's a lot of peer-reviewed sociological literature that has nailed what the fossil fuel companies have done. I'm telling you all this because I think the people in Europe and other parts of the world should be talking about this and bringing world attention to the evil that the fossil fuel companies have done. Okay, so here are the 6 things people don't know. The magnitude of reduction that is required to stabilize greenhouse gases at either 1.5 or 2 degrees centigrade. The speed of reductions. None of the environmental groups, even the well-educated, have been talking about, it's not enough to talk about 0. The speed is everything. These 2 charts show you 2 different lines. The one at the bottom reduces a lot less tons than the one at the top. Okay, it's not enough to say go to 0 by 2050. The speed that you get there also is very important in terms of critically reflecting upon what country's done. No one in the United States is talking about this. Very few people know what the carbon budget is. Very few people in the United States that every target is already a position on their fair share of a rapidly shrinking carbon budget. People don't know. This is a picture of a carbon budget. The dark blue was what it was in the year 2000. And each slice of the pie is a nation's fair share of that budget. But what people don't know, it's shrinking. So it's going to 0. So it's not only the speed, it's not only the magnitude, it's the speed, okay? Another thing people don't know, because corporations have controlled American culture is that it's neither legally or morally okay to use national self-interest as an excuse for what you're doing. Here you have Donald Trump pulling out of Paris and saying he's going to put US interests first. That's clearly unlawful internationally. It's morally reprehensible, but most Americans don't talk about that. We should be talking about Trump as one of the worst criminals in human history for not reducing the US emissions based upon US interests. Scientific uncertainty has never been either legally or morally an appropriate excuse for this. You all know that the UNFCCC had the precautionary principle in it since 1992. The United States actually ratified one of the few international treaties the United States ratified. The no harm principle of international law also requires people to act before they have full knowledge. But the way it's being debated in the US is so incredibly superficial. It's being debated as if, you know, having full certainty is a rational way of proceeding. Another issue that is not talked about at all is the developed countries in the 1992 treaty agreed that they would help the developing countries with both adaptation and mitigation. This chart shows you the developed countries in colors on the bottom. It's not only legally and morally required, and every target is not only already a position on fairness, it's practically required. If the developing countries don't go faster than developing countries, this chart shows you there's nothing left for the developing countries. So we should be screaming at the US for not acknowledging expressly. The US, none of the environmental groups, even the environmental groups aren't talking about the implications of equity and why it's practically necessary if you're going to save the world. And there's also, we agreed to finance adaptation and mitigation. It's not only legally required, it's practically required because refugees and things that are happening in other countries are going to destabilize the world. And so I'm sorry for going through all this, but my experience is the surprising ignorance about things that people have to know to think critically about a national target, an NDC. And our research in 24 countries concluded this was a worldwide problem, not only in the United States, but it's much worse in countries where fossil fuel companies have successfully framed the problem. So, and the last thing I want to mention, citizens have to know how what happens in other countries is going to hurt them. So I'll stop at that. That's what I wanted to say. I'm trying to organize the first order, highest priority problem in the US, I think, is to educate people about all this. And that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. That was incredibly informative and sobering, but it's also something to that could. What's the most recent book that you had referred to me, and that we shouldn't be afraid of scary things?
The best book on climate change I've ever read is called The Uninhabitable Earth. Okay. By David Wallace Wells. It's very well written. The thesis of the book is that even us, have underestimated the scale and scope of the problem. And at the end, he gets in the reason for that is because the fossil fuel industry in the United States had successfully framed the problem and tricked the world into debating only responding to how they framed the problem. So it's a really serious problem.
We have time for a couple questions. If any, I can open it up to the floor now. If anyone has questions for Don.
I wish I had something happier to say, like Notre Dame burned yesterday.
Hmm.
So,
No questions? Okay. Wait, do you plan to attend the COP this year, Don?
what's that?
Do you intend to attend the COP this year?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you see any trends, any changes happening? He attends every year,
Well, all of a sudden, young people are really starting to organize in the U.S. Articulate, passionate young people all across the country are starting to speak out. So I could talk about what things give me hope. I'm still hopeful, even though I'm a pessimist.
Yeah.
Okay. There's reason for hope, even though there's a lot to be pessimistic about. But it requires. I'm reading a book on what causes social change, and most social change theorists say it is grassroots action of passionate people that stand up and be heard. And there's a lot of good advice about which grassroots actions are successful. It depends on some people helping them organize to make the right arguments. So that's where my hope is.
Yeah.
I think the universities have been part of the problem. None of the universities in the U.S. I started a consortium of 40 Pennsylvania universities, and I've never heard any of them talk about equity. Okay, and there's a lot of evidence about scientific reticence. This is really interesting, getting to ethics. Why did IPCC not include the methane permafrost positive feedback, nor the large ice feedback? Why didn't they do it? Well, the answer is that to publish in a peer-reviewed scientific literature, science is set up to prevent what is called a type 2 statistical error, to prevent science from making false claims about cause and effect. So therefore, most sciences not only have epistemic norms like 95% confidence, but they prohibit you from making even risk statements without an empirical basis. So IPCC mission is to synthesize the peer-reviewed literature, but many disciplines don't allow you to speculate. Okay, so there's no speculation in most of the peer-reviewed journals. I got my philosophy degree at the New School for Social Research, and he claimed, Hans Jonas, who was head of the department, claimed, and this is counterintuitive, I thought it was nonsense, that the most important ethical problem facing the world, the most important ethical problem, is to get people clear about the ethics of uncertainty. Okay, and the reason why, he wrote this in 1965, and the reason why he said that the ethics around uncertainty was the most important problem, he said that humans are not now capable the technology of doing great good and great harm. And I predict that those economic interests that have interest in really dangerous technology will demand that government don't stop anything that could create harm until the government proved that it was harmful. But oh my God, was he right about that? Okay, I think this is probably more of a United States problem than Europe, but it's also obviously a problem in Australia and Canada that I'm aware of. That the corporations have framed the arguments about scientific uncertainty, and it's just outrageous nonsense.
Well, Don, Ben Bower is on the call, and he actually just put up, there's a conversation happening on the chat right now. Ben, did you want to make the point to Don what you wrote on here, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I can't see it because my...
Okay. This is from Ben Bower. First, he says, good to see you. He says, there is one recent Australian case that deals with the issue of carbon budget and taking into account downstream emissions. And then the others are talking about some recent cases around Ecuador. noting, oh yeah, Hugo Echeverria, he was with us, I think, with the Australian ALGA work, with Australian Earth Laws Alliance. But so there is some encouraging work going on.
Okay. So there's a legal case where the budget is actually an issue. Is that what I hear you say?
Ben, are you muted?
Okay.
No.
Sounds
Okay, that's all right. He wrote it on here, but I see now, Don. Thank you so much for your talk.
Okay.
It was
I'm
incredible.
here.
Oh, and
It's so good to talk to you all.
great. Thank you so much. And I see that Kirsten just joined us. So Kirsten, is your audio working?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And Don, really quickly, if you could stop sharing your screen.
Yep.
Okay, at the bottom should be that same button for share screen.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay. And Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're incredibly busy
I'm sorry, I'm
living what we're talking about. So it's just a real pleasure and a real honor to be here. Real quick introduction. This is Kirsten Angle. She has done everything, to put shortly. But if you'd like to look at her little bio really quickly, she's currently a state representative in the state of Arizona in the U.S. And she was a dean at the University of Arizona Law School and is a professor as well, and has written case books on environmental law, and has worked in government, civil society, across the board. And if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself before you begin, or just like to begin, this time is yours. And thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you all, and I am sorry to be late here. The schedule here, as you might expect, is sometimes a little crazy, and actually I got pulled into another environmental issue that's going on here, which is EPA's deadline for comments on their Waters of the United States rule, in which the Trump administration is really narrowing the jurisdiction of the Clean Water Act, and this has huge implications for Arizona. So I was pulled into some interviews and discussions on that. So my background is, actually I started out as EPA as an attorney, and really that really was an important foundation to my interest in environmental law, and I learned a ton for that, but I wasn't, didn't stay there too long, just 3 years, and then worked at Environmental Group. But I've been very interested in state policy in the environmental area. And I had some experience in the Massachusetts Attorney General's office before moving here to Arizona. So I teach environmental law, but I then decided to run for state office, really because I really feel like, you know, states really are in very much at the vanguard of a lot of environmental issues and other issues. And that, you know, this is a place where I could make a difference. So I was elected to the Arizona State House of Representatives in 2016 and have served, I was reelected last year, but so for the past 3 years, I've served on the Energy Committee. It's now called the Natural Resources and Water Committee this year. So that has given me a perspective on the state legislative process on environmental issues. So I think I'm here to talk a bit about, you know, climate change and policy at the state level. And this is something where I think it's something of a, you know, good news, bad news scenario. With the retraction of the federal government, you know, the lack of having any federal climate change legislation here in the United States, and a new administration that is not using what the Obama administration did, which was to use the authority under the Clean Air Act as a framework and really provision of authority to regulate the emissions of greenhouse gases. That was something the Obama administration did after it got basically authorization to do so in the Massachusetts versus EPA 2007 Supreme Court case, which said that greenhouse gases are air pollutants that are subject to regulation under the Clean Air Act. The Obama administration was fairly aggressive in using that authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate greenhouse gases. So not only did they regulate vehicle emissions, but they regulated methane from landfills, and they also issued something known as the Clean Power Plan, which is, a very large regulation that was to regulate carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases from existing power plants. So we've had a retraction from that. And so the Trump administration has moved away from that, and I could go into more details about that. But that leaves open, well, if we're going to have action on climate change, where is it going to come from? It's really got to come from, the states and the cities. And we have had real leaders in the United States, from California, New York, New Jersey. It's tended to be the states that were actually the plaintiffs in that Massachusetts versus EPA case. They've been the leading states working on climate regulation, both within their territories as well as pushing the federal government to regulate in this area. And so I think that they have been real leaders. They've been involved on the international level as well. But if you don't have that kind of constituency that's interested in being an environmental leader on the state level, then we're not getting that progress, obviously. So here in Arizona, it's been, from my perspective, really like pushing boulders uphill. We do not have, in the majority controlled legislature right now, controlled by the Republican Party, we don't have interest in working on climate change. There is a lot of concern over issues of water. We've had major issues dealing with drought here. So certainly the impacts of climate change are front and center here in Arizona, but there is really no political will to address mitigating greenhouse gases, or really doing adaptation in a way that clearly recognizes that climate change is really part of the problem. So I think at this point, my role has been to raise the issue as much as I can, when I can, to introduce bills on energy efficiency. I introduced a bill to have Arizona adopt the California Clean Vehicle Emission Standards. These are standards that apply to carbon dioxide, as well as to have a mandate for a certain percentage of vehicle fleets would be electric cars. I think this would be a very important step for all states across the United States. Individual states can basically adopt these standards. We have 13 states in the United States that have done so far. I propose that bill every year. I did get a hearing on it once last year, but it was not adopted. I've also introduced bills on energy efficiency, that we should upgrade our appliance standards here in the state to the international standards. This would save a lot of energy. That would reduce greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, did not get a hearing on that bill. I have several bills dealing with water conservation, and of course, the movement of water within a state like an arid state like Arizona also uses a ton of energy. So that would help with climate change if we just had more water conservation. So far not making too much ground, but very much working on it. So we have some active cities here in the state. So I think I think it's a good demonstration of how cities can act on climate change and become leaders. And then you could have very large cities in other parts of the world that become copycats. And that can range from dealing with energy efficiency to transportation to land use and zoning issues. So I think that there's a lot of progress can be made on that local level as well. So I think those are the comments that I have. I don't know how we're doing on time or whether or not you have issues where
I know I have some questions,
Okay,
but,
sure.
but I'd like to open the floor to others. I don't want to take, chairwomanship's priority. But are there any questions for Kirsten?
This is Don. I have a question, Kristen.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? We've never met, but I know your parents very, very well.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
very, very fond of both of them, okay? And I know other people that have worked
It's
with
mutual.
you. Okay. Is there a fossil fuel industry presence in Arizona that is slowing things down? What industries are behind stopping things in Arizona?
Well, that's a really good question. It seems to be the utilities.
Mm.
And the utilities have been very, very powerful political actors here. And they are integrated utilities. And they are, each of them, the big ones do have a sizable fossil fuel imprint. They do have some renewable energy in their portfolios as well. We have actually the most major coal mine we have is actually in the northern part of the state on the Navajo reservation. And we have a big issue with a coal plant there that will be closing because the owners of the plant have found it uneconomical to keep it going. And it's a major purchaser of the coal next door that's also on tribal lands. I don't know that we've got, we do have natural gas extraction, some natural gas extraction. But the utilities have been, I don't think it's so much it's been the utilities themselves that have been very potent political actors as opposed to the owners of the fossil fuel extraction industries themselves.
One quick comment. I have a very close friend who's a legislator, and he says citizens should know who's stopping this. They don't know. Okay.
It's been pretty clear that the biggest entity stopping it is APS, Arizona Public Service Corporation. There have been a lot of news about the amount they spent, something like $30 million to stop a citizen initiative last year that would have increased the renewable energy portfolio standard for utilities. So I think there's many more actors that are involved. So I think that's an excellent comment. And I think you're right. We've got to make sure. But it's been pretty clear that APS has been one of the really bad ones.
In Pennsylvania, there are now 208 full-time lobbyists working for the natural gas industry. Okay. Okay. And okay, it used to be the coal industry that stopped everything, but now it's the natural gas industry.
Natural gas, right.
I think just to be respectful of everyone's time and the course, we could probably take one more question. If there's not one from the audience, then I'll use mine. Otherwise, I'll email it to you. So, Shelley? Oh, please unmute. Or I can. There we go.
Yes. Yes. So my question is that, first of all, thank you very well for letting me participate. It's the first time for me. And for the comment about the utilities, which I totally agree. And my question is, what do you think about the Pacific Legal Foundation? I'm actually looking into them, and you might know more information than me. And I think they are doing a great job. I was just thinking, what do you think about them?
I'm not sure. Can you rephrase that just a little bit? I'm not sure I quite got the core of your question about
Pacific Legal Foundation. I'm not sure if you've heard about this foundation. This is a foundation that is dealing with property rights and how it could be used against sometimes individual rights, even with the environmental law. They are dealing mainly with environmental law for the environmental law, and it's in the US. So I was wondering if you know about them, first of all. Pacific
what
Legal
is the name?
Foundation.
I didn't catch that.
Pacific Legal Foundation.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I have heard about them. Yes, there are several. They are very focused on protecting private property rights, and
Also, yes.
interpret that as being anti-regulation. That regulation is interfering with private development rights. So they have been very aggressive in terms of opposing, regulation under the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, all of these, Endangered Species Act. They have really wanted to roll that back. So they have been a powerful source. They comment on all the regulations. They file a lot of lawsuits. And I think that their interpretation of private property rights is way beyond what the Constitution in the United States supports. So I have heard of them. They're definitely they are a big force here against environmental regulation.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to hear actually, because if you see them I'm coming from Switzerland, and I can't follow everything that they're doing, but it does seem that a lot of environmental law is a bit too governmental, maybe sometimes used against individual rights, as I can see also in Europe countries. But I am totally for the environmental law, of course, because I was just writing a book about it. But I always have a critical view, and I wanted to know your opinion about it. Thank you for this.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously there's some kind of balance here between protecting private property and regulation, but the courts have basically said you have to have really a total taking of a property right in order to find that it requires compensation. And so that's the area in which they've really been working at trying to say, no, you really can't regulate anything without compensating people for the restrictions on their property rights. And that, I think, is going too far.
Thank you for that. I wanted to hear that.
Okay.
I'll just do you have any final words, Kirsten, before I just wrap up?
No, I just apologize that I got on so late. I also, when I got on, I had trouble sort of getting my Zoom things set up, so that led to a delay too. So I would have wanted to participate for longer.
Oh, so, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
It made it willing to respond to any questions that people have, and I do have some PowerPoints that I could contribute to the conversation if you want to send them out.
That would be wonderful. And if anyone has questions for any of the panelists, including Kirsten, please email me the questions. I'll put you into touch. And if you could get me those PowerPoints, that would be wonderful too, and I'll put them on our page. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It was a great success. I hope you feel the same. And I will be putting the recording on the website to share broadly as well. And the next webinar for May is on Jeff Garver. He was here at the beginning of the session. Ecological Economics Beyond Extractivism, North America and Australia. And that's our May session. So just keep in touch, and I'll be keeping in touch with you. So thank you so much to everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job, Katie.
I thought it went really well. There's a good chat going on that I'm gonna, before I cut away.
I learned quite a few things I didn't know about going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And your presentation was really great too, Don. Thank you. I'm trying to copy and paste the chat real quick so I don't miss any of these
Okay.
links and conversations.
A couple people have asked for my PowerPoints. Can I send it to you?
Yes,
or?
absolutely. Send it to me. Probably on Google Drive would be the easiest, unless you put it into a PDF.
Okay.
So, okay. Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We should talk. I'm writing the chapter titles now.
Oh, good.
I'll get that to you in the next couple of days. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
And I'll get the invite letter to you too.
Next Tuesday, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.